Alright guys, so today I'm going to show you how to make an object move around in Unity. Whether you're a beginner or just looking to brush up on your skills, this will help you get started with the basic movement. Let's dive in. So I'm going to assume that since you are searching for how to make an object move, how to get a player to move around the screen, I'm going to assume that you already have a project open and are ready to get started. So first off, we need to make a cube or object. We can just right click here in the hierarchy, 2D object, sprites, and square. There you go. We have our little player right here. Next, we're gonna need to add a box collider 2D. You can just start typing it in here in the add component and the inspector. Alright, so once we got that box collider on there, it automatically sets to the correct shape. We don't have to do anything with it there. But then we can now get started on our player movement. First off, we're going to need to go into our assets folder down here in the project. I made a new folder. You don't have to. I like to make folders for everything because it keeps everything nice and clean and I can figure out where everything is. But I'll open up that folder. I'll right click down here, go to create and C# script. I will just name that player movement and open that up. So here we are right here in the script. Now I already have a script made. It's from a few different places, mostly from the YouTube channel Bendux. He does some really great tutorials if you want to check him out. But I compiled a bunch of his scripts that he has into one so that it just has a bunch of different features. I will put that in description, also possibly a link to his channel, and I'm just going to find that script and copy it over. Alright, so I've got the script in here. This is a very long script. As I said, I compiled a bunch of different scripts together to make this one. But I won't go in through all of the details on explaining how it works, and that you can go through and watch Bendux's tutorials for each of these different scripts that I compiled together, and then it might help you understand them a bit more. We're not going to go that in depth today. Alright, now that we have the script all made, I'm just going to click this and drag it over here right into the squares inspector. Now there's a lot of stuff here, so don't get overwhelmed. It's stuff that we can very quickly figure out on our way through this. So for all of these, the speed, jumping power, dashing time, and dashing cooldown, I've set up automatically to settings that I really liked, but these are all changeable. You can just click and drag next to here, or you can just put in a number. For the RB, we actually need to add a component, and this one is a rigid body 2D right here. We're going to click that and drag it right in here. Boom. Now that's all done. We don't have to do anything to the rigid body. Next, we are going to do the trail renderer, which is what this TR stands for, so we're going to have to add a new one. Trail renderer. And drag that right in here. We're going to have to mess with some of the settings in this later, but we don't need to do that right now. Now, ground check and wall check, those are a little bit more complicated, so we'll do those last. Animator, just got to add the component and drag it in. Nothing too fancy there. Don't have to mess with that one at all. So now that we've got those, we have to make our ground check and wall checks. To do that, we're just going to right click on our square in the hierarchy and click create empty. That'll automatically set it as a child, which just means that it'll follow it around anywhere it'll go. I'm gonna name this just ground check. There we go. Now, currently, as you might be able to see right here, the ground check is centered on the square, and that's alright, but except for the fact that with it being centered, we're not going to be able to check if the ground's even there. So we're going to go over here to this panel that is most of the time right here in the left hand side of the screen. Going to click Move Tool and just grab this green arrow and drag it down so that the horizontal arrow, the red arrow, is just on top of the bottom. So there we go. Now we've got our ground check set up. And for the wall check, we do pretty much the same thing. Right click on the square in the hierarchy, create empty, and just name it wall check. And then we click it and do the opposite. Drag the red arrow so that the green arrow is up against the right side of your player. Because the player will actually flip back and forth depending on which direction you're moving, so you only want it on this side. Now we need to click this and drag it just all the way over here to the ground check, because that's where it needs to go. And do the same with the wall check or wall check area. Now the ground layer, currently, we don't have a layer that we need to set yet, but now we need to make our ground. So for the ground, we're going to do something very similar to the player. We're just going to right click, 2D object, sprites, square. And we're just going to have another square, drag it down, and just scale it so that it covers the bottom of our screen. We can drag it down here, and then we need to do a box collider on it, just like on the player, because otherwise they won't actually interact and they'll just go right through each other. We can name this ground, and we can name this player. Alright, now that we have our ground, we can go to the layer, we can click add layer, and it'll bring this up. I normally put it right here. It doesn't really matter where you put it in this entire list, but I'll put it here. You can just name it ground. Now that we have the ground layer set up, we're gonna have to go back to the ground and set it to ground. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to jump. We can go back to our player, get to the player movement script, and then just set the layer for the ground to ground. Now, I normally just set both of them, the wall layer and the ground layer, to ground, just because I haven't needed to separate them, but in some cases you do, so that's why it's there. Now that we have those in place, we can change the trail render a little bit before we press play. Now, the trail render, you're going to want to uncheck emitting so that it only plays when we're dashing. And the time, you're going to want to set it to 0.1, just really short time. You can change it to a longer time if you wanted to stay there for a little bit longer. Now, the color, you can change this as much as you want. We'll just do that for now. And you can go down to this arrow, or up to this arrow, and change how transparent it is near the end. But that won't actually do anything unless we go to this materials drop down, click this little circle, and grab the sprite default material right there. Without it, it'll just be pink, and sometimes that's alright, but other times you may want it to be blue. The width, I like to change it to about 0.5, and then near the end, if you double click on this line, you can drag it near the end, Control S, and then now that that's all set up, we can just press play, And now that we've got the trail render set up, we can then just press play, and there you have it. Now your player will fall, and it'll move left and right with the A and D keys, jump with space, and as you can see it jumps really high right now. That's because the gravity is set lower. You can change that just right here in the gravity scale. I like to set it around to 4. You can jump with space, you can double jump, and you can dash with shift. And that is pretty much it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe and comment for what else I should give a tutorial about.